Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
I make a motion, accept the minutes.
Thank you, Rick. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second. Oh,
Thank you, Everett. We have a motion from Rick and a second from Everett, and I will go one by one. Heidi, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Rick?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Everett?
Yes.
And that's a yes from me. That's unanimous. Thank you all. Next item, meeting mail. Agent Kelly, do we have any meeting mail?
Actually, we got a letter today from Ty and Bond about a project that they are going to do at the, I think it's up at the LNG plant. They have a new building that's going in outside of the buffer zone and a fence that will go in around it,
Right.
that will be in the buffer zone. I believe we looked at this already once. Bob.
Yes, you and I did, correct. Yes, just like basically it's like hardly any of it is within any area where we have jurisdiction. So, you know, I advised Marilee to tell the LNG folks to proceed, you know. All right, so that's that. Old business, I see nothing. New business, I see nothing. No, let me take that back. Old business, I see nothing. New business, we have an RDA from PJ Keating Company, 72 South Main Street. A request for determination was filed by PJ Keating Company for property located at 72 South Main Street, map 15, lots 15 through 17. The applicant proposes to clear accumulated silt and replace certain areas of riprap rock with similarly sized stone from Basin 1C. And Mr. Vigneault, am I turning this over to you?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank everyone who came out to the site on Saturday morning. Pretty bad rain that we had there, but it certainly showed folks a lot of the water that enters into that unnamed intermittent tributary comes from South Main Street itself. There was little flow coming from our particular basin at the time, but it was quite a rainstorm, and I thank everyone for coming out that day. As we went over in the field, PJK proposes some maintenance activities within our final industrial settling basin 1C. What we plan to do is, at the advice of others, we will sample the representative sample of the silt that is within that basin. And we propose to sample that silt for what's called RECRA 8 metals. That consists of arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury, selenium, and silver, as well as total petroleum hydrocarbons. Now, we're doing that merely because of the fact that we want to know if there are any constituents in there that might be over any limits for consideration of handling in a different way. Essentially, when we remove the silt from the basin, we'll be doing that under a variety of conditions, but primarily it'll be laborers will be doing it by hand. We don't suspect that there's a tremendous amount of silt that's accumulated in there, given the history of folks prior to my being on board, some of the earlier cleaning of that basin in the past. So, but nevertheless, there is some accumulated sediment in there that we've seen, and we want to get that out of there so that it doesn't potentially wash out during either one of our discharge events or during a rain event, because we do receive water through a 30-inch line that runs across our property as well, that comes up from the Lawson Avenue area. What we propose to do is do this under dry conditions, or at least under conditions where nothing will leave the basin. That is, we will not allow water to leave the basin as we clean out and maintain our basin. The maintenance of the basin is allowed. It's basically condition of the SWIP. And like any other detention basin or maintenance basin, should be cleaned on a basis to be determined by observation or otherwise. So we will not be discharging any water from the basin during the time that we are cleaning the basin. Just want to make that real clear. And the way that we'll do that is that we'll put down a straw bale and silt fence dam. But moreover, we have on site a vacuum truck that can collect any water that accumulates. If it does, I mean, we're basically going to try to do this under dry conditions, but we're also going to try and do this as quickly as the commission gives us approval to do so. The removal of the accumulated silt, like I said, will be done primarily by hand. Should we find that a mini excavator would make the job go quicker, we do have access to the back of the basin. As it stands, we have a large door that was built into the visual barrier that is at the end of the basin, which I'm sure you all saw. The silt itself, once it's removed and assuming it's clean, we haven't tested it yet, then it will be placed in the rear of our property where silt piles currently exist. They'll be put on the west side of that silt pile. I really don't foresee having a tremendous amount of silt coming out of there. So, you know, in the scheme of things, it'll probably be, you know, I can't estimate for sure, but it won't be a lot. You know, it'll be in the 5 to 10 cubic yard range. So pretty small amount. What we will also be doing with the commission's permission, as I pointed out in the field on Saturday morning, we're going to extend the pipe that enters into the south side of the basin to the north side of the basin. That pipe actually discharges water into the settling basin from the vein drains that we have put in place, as well as the more or less a 1,500 gallon septic tank that lets the silt to settle out. And then that goes into that small catch basin that you saw, we pointed out, and then it goes diagonally and goes into the settling basin. So what we'll do is we'll extend the pipe from where it currently exists underneath the earthen berm, and we'll discharge on the north side of the settling basin. What that will do is basically put that material, that water, on the opposite side of the settling basin and allow it to have a longer detention time, as I explained in the field on Saturday. We will also, once we're done with our cleanup, so to speak, we obviously realize that there will be fine sediments and silt that remain behind, and we will rinse out the settling basin using our water truck on one end, and then on the other end, our vacuum truck to take that water back out. Again, the intention is to not have any water leave the site during this maintenance procedure. We also plan to replace the booms that you saw there. So we'll put in new booms. We may put in more than the 3 that are there. If the condition of the 3 booms that are currently there still, and they still do work. They don't look real nice, obviously, but they certainly still do their job. But we'll be putting in new booms, and we'll also be putting in some flock logs. Flock logs are really intended to, what they're referred to as, in technical terms, is a semi-hydrated anionic polychloramide logs. And what they do is that they, when placed in the flow of water, they remove fine particulates, they reduce turbidity, they drop out the metals, and also the inanimate nutrients as well. So overall, you know, it's a typical maintenance type of operation. The conservation agent requested that we file a request for determination of applicability, which we're happy to do. We do not believe that we are actually within a jurisdictional wetland area. All work will be done at least 100 feet above the confluence of well, 100 feet above where the water leaves our property under South Main Street. So I provided also the commission with some USGS stream stats because I've heard that there's some question as to whether or not that unnamed tributary is intermittent or perennial. It is indeed intermittent. It has a 0.05 square mile drainage area, and in conformance with the DEP regulations, if there's a question about perennial or intermittent, then you look to the drainage area that feeds into that area. And DEP in 2002 came out and said, if the drainage area is 1 square mile, then it's likely perennial, and anything less than 1 square mile is likely intermittent. Being a 0.05 square mile area, it's well below 1 square mile. So I've seen it personally dry. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo of it, as I indicated in the field on Saturday as well. So we went to the next step of providing the commission with the USGS stream stats reports, and welcome the commission to also review that website and come to their own conclusion. So that's essentially it, Mr. Chairman, and I welcome any questions.
Mr. Vigna, before I call on anybody else, can I have you go back to the first point you were making about, it sounded like you were offering additional sampling, is that correct?
So we will actually sample a representative sample of the silt itself. So it's not a water sample like we commonly take to be in compliance with our NPDES permit, but it's just for the silt itself. So we are offering to do that. You know, we're confident that the silt is silt, and that we just want to make sure that it's clean and that we can deposit it on our property where we deposit other silt. So it's just, you know, really just to make sure that we don't have any parameters that exceed something that would be considered a potential hazardous material. If for any reason one of the metals in the RCRA 8 come back, or one of the total petroleum hydrocarbons come back, we've done this in consultation with Net Labs in West Warwick, Rhode Island, of what we should be sampling for. And that was their advice. And again, merely to make sure that we're not disposing of anything that might exceed a hazardous material threshold on our site. If for any reason the silt is found to be over any threshold, then we would contract with Clean Harbors and have them take the silt and they would dispose of it themselves.
Okay, for the purposes of the record and the minutes, you mentioned a firm in West Warwick. What was the name again, please?
It's called Net Lab.
With
Net,
an N?
pardon me?
With an N as in Nancy?
Yes, as NETLAB.
Okay.
That's where all of our samples are, all of our water samples are analyzed at that location. And so this is considered, a soil sample, which we don't typically, analyze for types of things like that. But we've been in contact with Net Labs, and they obviously do analyses on this type of media as well.
So they will get your silt samples.
They will receive the silt samples. We'll collect the silt samples in glass jars that they provide. We will take the silt out of the basin, and we'll have a chain of custody, and it will go to Net Lab in Warwick, Rhode Island. Now, again, I mean that's merely for the purposes of being overly cautious and conservative on our end of things. We have silt and siltation ponds. As you may well know, silt is a byproduct of the stone crushing operation.
Okay. Mr. Leger, did you want to add anything to this before I call on our agent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I have nothing to add at the moment. Thank you, though.
Thank you. So Merrily, questions, comments before we go through the asking?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Saturday, I thought I understood you to say you were going to remove the berm. Is that true?
We're not removing the earthen berm. No, not at all, Merrily. The earthen berm will stay just as it is now. All I said on Saturday was that we may be replacing some riprap with similar size riprap. If we see any areas within that earthen berm that have been compromised or otherwise, then we would put in new riprap rock. It's not really essential in any stretch of the imagination if that's a concern, but we're certainly not removing the middle earthen berm. If you'd like me to repeat how the berm works, I'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Sure. So there's a north side of the berm where our discharge pipe from the quarry discharges in, okay? That's that black pipe that you see on the opposite side that we're from, okay? So when we turn on and we want to dewater our secondary settling basin, then we turn on the pump, and the pump will discharge through that black pipe and go into the northern side of that detention basin. So there's really a north side and a south side. They're connected by a 12-inch pipe that is within that berm itself at the far end of that. What's going on here? Okay, so in any event, all I can see is Roger Akerwell's name on here, but in any event, the way, so once the water level raises up high enough on the north side of that, so we could discharge for some period of time, and the northern side of the berm would not, get high enough in water until it starts to discharge to the southern side. So it only discharges through that 12-inch pipe that is embedded in the earthen berm that's there. So as I pointed out on Saturday, that's that white pipe that connects the north side to the south side. But we have no intention of removing the earthen berm between the two sides of that basin. The basin will be precisely the same as you saw on Saturday. It will just be, we're just doing some maintaining of it.
Okay, so how deep down do you dig for the sediment? Just as far as you have to go?
Well, it's a very shallow basin in and of itself. But we will remove as much sediment as we need to. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, okay, so I saw at least 3 pipes. One is for the outflow,
Mhm.
and then one connects the 2 sides, you said, right?
That's correct.
What does the other one do?
And there's a third pipe, which is a 30-inch diameter pipe that feeds into the southern side of the sediment basin. And that 30-inch pipe actually takes water that accumulates and goes into an area from the south side of the property. That water comes from the Lawson area.
Okay,
Okay, and then the fourth pipe is the pipe that is the 12-inch pipe that discharges from our existing collection system that I pointed out, that we will run that pipe then. So we'll open up the berm, we'll run a pipe from what is now the south side of the basin into the north side of the basin. So it's not really changing a whole lot, but the intent of that is to improve the amount of settling time that discharge pipe has. So it improves the detention time. And obviously with any improvement in detention time, then you get an improvement in the settling of solids.
is there a particular amount of settling time that you need?
I don't have a time period of what we need. But I do say that again, this is a maintenance of the basin. We're meeting our effluent limitations. We've been over this. I did tell the commission that on October 31st, we had an exceedance of TSS. I contacted the EPA concerning that. The EPA automatically, by the way that you do your discharge monitoring reporting, if you exceed an effluent limitation, then it automatically asks you if you acknowledge that you've seen the exceedance.
Put this back in your.
You can put it in the closet, in your closet.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so it's hay bales and silt fence dam, you said, right, that you're gonna put up, and then the
Along
vacuum.
with a water vacuum truck right there. Yeah.
Excellent, okay.
Mhm.
So,
So
okay,
really, again, I'm telling the commission that we have no intent of having any water, clean, dirty, or indifferent, leave the site while we do this work. So there's no, that is really the intent, is that, no water will enter the unnamed tributary that goes under South Main Street and out into the Acushnet River. That's our intent, and purposefully, because if we stir up the sediment that's in there as we clean it, we don't want that going downstream. Our contribution to that unnamed tributary is about 0.005 square miles. And the overall confluence of that unnamed tributary to the Acushnet River is 0.05 square miles. Again, it's an intermittent stream. I've seen it dry. I don't have a picture of it, but I would like to settle that, whoever and whatever questions anyone might have. But if anyone was to consider that to be a river and have a riverfront area, that's completely inaccurate.
Mary Lee, this is Alex Weissite from KP Law, Town Council's office. Would it be all right if I asked a question?
absolutely.
And I'm the chair. Please address those questions to me.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Alex
Thank you.
Weissite here from KP Law.
Thank you.
I just had a question for Mary Lee, if that's okay.
Please.
Mary Lee, I think you had brought to my attention recently that there was an ANRAD that was filed for this property back in 2010. And
Yes.
the plans that were included as part of that ANRAD delineated this area we're speaking of as a resource area. Is that
Yes.
your understanding?
Yes,
So I guess,
that was my
my
understanding.
question for the applicants would be, why are we talking about an RDA right now when they had filed a plan in 2010 showing this area as a resource area?
Sure, sure. I can answer that. And Luke, let me just take the first shot at that, Luke, even though the attorney asked the question. If you look at what they're claiming to be a wetland area, basically what that plan says in 1941, they plotted on that plan, and the I don't know who marked it up. But there's a variety of different areas that have been marked up as supposed wetland areas. We've already been to the commission concerning the jurisdictional issues of the settling basin itself, and the commission determined that it was not a wetland area. And by non-ratification of the enforcement order that they issued. And I mean, if have you ever been to that site, Mr. Weisheit?
I have not, no.
Okay, so if you had been there, you'd realize that it's a man-made industrial settling basin. And regardless of whether or not in 1941 it was marked out as some type of a wetland area or not, well before the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act of 1972. The commission has already determined that it's not a wetland area. That's not really the point here in any event. I mean, if you're looking for us to file a notice of intent, is that's what you're getting to, then Mr.
I just want to be sure we're following the appropriate procedure here, because I don't think you're correct to say the commission determined that it's not a resource area. What we have on file is a plan from 2010 that shows that it is a resource area.
No, you're mistaken about that, clearly, but that's fine. Luke, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. So my response to that question would be that first and foremost, I'm not sure what the ORAD that would have been issued following the filing of that ANRAD showed or ruled. I heard you say that the ANRAD showed this as a resource area. I didn't hear you say what the ORAD showed. In any event, the ORAD would have expired.
Is that an ORAD wasn't actually issued.
Okay, so there you go. So there's no actual determination that this would be a jurisdictional wetland resource area. Even if that had happened, that would have expired 7 years ago. So that would be far, far outdated.
No,
What we're talking about, if I may finish, please, Mr. Weisheit, thank you. What we're talking about here is a fully permitted legal stormwater management system, one component of that. We're talking about maintenance, which is exempt under these regulations. Mr. Vino has flagged those for you in our RDA. And as Mr. Vino mentioned earlier, it's our view that this is beyond 100 feet from any jurisdictional resource area, so outside of the buffer zone. So in our view, we're outside the Concom's jurisdiction. We are proposing to do work that's exempt anyhow and allowed under our SWIP. We are here at Ms. Kelly's request to file the RDA. As Doug said, we're happy to do that. We aren't trying to hide anything from anybody. We want to work cooperatively with the commission. We want to be above board with everything we're doing at the site. That's why we're here. But I think that trying to backtrack and ask questions about whether this is a jurisdictional resource area based on some filing from 10 years ago that was never actually ratified is not terribly helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Weiss, I have another question.
I do. So I understand that the applicant is arguing that, you know, this is an exempt activity, and I know they've cited to 310 CMR 10.02 C. I would point them though to subpart 5, which requires that if they're going to establish that or try to establish that the activities are, you know, exempt, they first need to show that This was part of a stormwater system that was designed, constructed, installed, maintained, and improved pursuant to the stormwater management policy or pursuant to 310 CMR 10.056K and Q, and that the system was designed, constructed, installed, improved on or after November 18 of 1996. They also have the burden of establishing whether the stormwater management system was installed in areas subject to protection or buffer zone, and if so, that the system was constructed in accordance with all applicable provisions of the Act. So I haven't seen any evidence presented regarding them meeting that burden yet.
Mr. Leger, would you like to respond?
I think that Doug would probably be better able to speak to the permitting history because and the actual sort of time of construction than I would. So I would refer to Doug on that. But again, I think that also misses the point that the works outside of the buffer zone. But go ahead.
It's really mute, and I don't really understand where you're going with this because the end of the day, the purpose from what I would understand it to be would be to discharge the cleanest water that you can from the quarry area. In order to do that, maintenance activities need to be done. We can argue, if you wish, about your intentions about whether it's a wetland area or not. Having never been there, you don't know that it's a stone-lined, man-made settling basin. It's got no characteristics of being a wetland whatsoever. There's no hydric soils. There's no, other than some phragmites around the edges of it. That's about the extent of what you might consider a wetland area. And if you consider phragmites an invasive species, it's something that you can hang your hat on as a wetland area, then certainly, be my guest. But the fact is that everyone knows who's been out there that it's a stone line, man-made channel that we're merely using as a settling basin as allowed in our SWIP, as approved by EPA, as a BMP to improve the discharge of the water quality into that unnamed tributary. It's kind of almost, and the argument that we shouldn't clean it or that you want us to go through additional hoops or whatnot in order to satisfy your agenda. I just don't understand it.
I just want to be sure we're following the appropriate process here. And again, I'm going by a plan that's on record where your company hired an engineer that delineated this area as a wetland in 2010. So I don't know what's changed since then.
Okay, well, I don't know that that's the facts, but then the town should present their same filing that they made in order to put in their drainage from the property on the northern side of the site, the stone line channel that they built and that we provided the stone for and allowed them to use our property in order to connect that drainage area into it. So I guess we could ask the town to present that information as well, if that's what you'd like to do. But again, I mean, it sounds to me that you're looking to have some type of a I don't know what. All we're trying to do is clean the maintenance basin, the settling basins that is recognized by the federal government as being just that. The 2009, again, we've looked at that plan. We've had public hearings about that plan, and what that plan does is it marks it up in a yellow highlight of various things that showed up on a 1941 topographic map that has no bearing whatsoever on what's out there now or what's been done since the Wetlands Protection Act was enacted. So I don't know when the basin was built. I just don't know. And but it's moot in any event. We're not really, if, what I would ask you, what you would expect to get out of some additional filing. This filing is a request for determination of applicability is not solely intended to say whether or not it's a wetland or what it is or what it is. It's asking the commission permission to do some maintenance activities that fall under the maintenance maintenance criteria of the Wetlands Protection Act, and to potentially improve the water quality of the water leaving the site through a maintenance activity. It's all good. It has nothing to do with whatever you may want to argue, and I have nothing more to say about whether or not we're doing the procedurally correct or not. That's the commission's call, and that's all I have to say about that.
Mr. Hannon, you had asked to be called on, so I'm going to call on you now. Take yourself off mute, please, Pat.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. Alex, are you done?
I am, thanks, Pat.
Okay, so
Thank you, Mr. Weisler.
I've been out there on numerous occasions, and I can tell you that I'm in favor of the RDA. Kevin Gaspar, Selectman Gaspar and myself were at a meeting at Keating with Merrilee, talking about the basin. It does need repairs. It does need maintenance. And it was the town's feeling that maybe an RDA was the quickest way to get them the relief they needed. But we wanted to be sure that the commission could permit this, and that you didn't need to follow the NOI process. And I think that that's what Alex is bringing up. But I would like to add to Mr. Vigneault's description the fact that the pipe that they're going to cross from the south side to the north side is a change to the basin. And I would respectfully disagree with Mr. Vigneault's assertion that the basin is functioning properly. The flow that comes out of the white pipe, as he described it, comes from the north side of the basin to the south with effluent after it's had a chance to settle. And then it settles a little bit longer in the south side of the basin and discharges to the river. But there is a breach, and maybe Mr. Vigneault hasn't seen it, but there's a breach west of that white pipe, and water is gushing out of the berm, and it's short-circuiting. It's not staying in the basin long enough to get the treatment that it needs. Adding the flock logs is probably a good idea, but there needs to be some design or a plan of where they're being added, what they consist of. If the flocculant that's in the logs is compatible with aquatic life, there's two different kinds of flock, and one is and one isn't. I'm sure they've done that research, but it would be nice for the commission to have that. And I think that Attorney Weishite could assist the commission with some conditions for an RDA, with conditions. And that would avoid the NOI process and get them back on track with getting the water out of their quarry. And I would hope that you would accommodate that.
Thank you, Mr. Hannon. Mr. Vigneault, Mr. Leger, comments, responses?
I would just say that certainly our preference to be able to do the work quickly would be to have a negative determination as opposed to needing to go through the full NOI process. So if the commission is inclined to do that and place some conditions on a negative determination, as Mr. Hannon has suggested, I think that would certainly be preferable from our view to a positive determination and requiring us to go through the full NOI process.
I have a question regarding placement of flock logs. First of all, are these submerged items or are these on the surface? And second of all, before you were to go ahead with this work anyway, and this is to either one of you, do you plan on showing plans to the commission before any work is done?
Doug, you want to take that? Doug, you're muted there. I'm not sure if you're aware.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Certainly, we would, we have no problem with conditions on the RDA. I mean, that's fine. As far as the flock logs themselves, they will be, there's two types, Chairman Roca. Then they can either be on the surface, or they can be submerged as well. But typically the flock logs will be on the surface. And what they do is, again, it's an anionic condition that that takes in the silt, the metals and whatnot. If you lived on a lake, you might know that a common thing of getting rid of algae is to spray a flocculant on top of the surface of the lake, and the flocculant then settles down and pulls the algae out of the water column, and it goes down to the bottom of the ground. So it's not unlike that at all. As far as some design work or whatnot, I mean, literally, what we're doing is extending a pipe directionally across underneath the berm that we will excavate out. We'll put a new Schedule 80 pipe, the same size, and it will discharge rather from into the southern side into the northern side. It's not rocket science. You don't need an engineer to figure out how to do that. Anybody could connect that pipe from one side of the location to the other. We don't need to hire a professional engineer to do that. We're in the construction business. We know how to connect one pipe to the other side of the pipe. As far as any breach within the earthen berm itself, obviously that's what we're alluding to with regards to any improvements that we may need with respect to riprap. As far as the intuition or the connotation that we're not getting our sufficient detention basin because it's not rising up to the level of that 12-inch white pipe, that's all speculation, and that's all, hearsay and whatnot. I'm sure that Mr. Hannon hasn't done any calculations on that one way or another, but nevertheless, we intend to improve that earthen berm so that we don't have a breach between it. There's no breach. There may be some water that goes through that earthen berm and gets to from the northern side to the southern side. Our whole intention is to increase the detention time as much as possible within that basin, because all that does is improve our ability to settle out any silt and improve that. So we welcome the observation from Mr. Hannon, and we intend to do everything we can to increase the detention time within that settling basin as best we can. And we have also hired TRC Environmental, a professional hydrologist, and he is assisting us with various ideas as well. Any changes that we make or anything along those lines, we will report to EPA concerning those changes. The basin itself is really under the part of our SWIP, our Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, that were provided to the town, that were provided to DEP, and we're provided to EPA, obviously. So, the jurisdictional issue on a settling basin is you know, I just don't understand the avenue or the discussion concerning, you know, our intent to improve the situation in any way requires anything than what we've already presented, and the commission is welcome to put conditions on that. But I would agree with Luc Legier, our attorney, that negative determination would be sufficient. But again, if the commission feels as though they want to put on reasonable conditions above and beyond what we've already stated that we will do, then that's fine. But if the conditions are unreasonable, then we will take the appropriate actions as well. So, you know, I don't think that this needs to be a confrontational thing or anything else. We're really just trying to do the right thing and improve the water quality that leaves our site. And again, we have had no problems with water quality meeting our effluent limitations under the EPA NPDES permit. So this is merely a maintenance issue so that we don't run into problems down the road. And that's what we're asking the commission to do.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, appreciate it.
if I could, Mr. Chairman?
Please, Pat. Mr. Hannon.
Yep, I'm not trying to be argumentative here, but the town has the right to the basin functions properly. Mr. Vigno knows they had an exceedance in one of the last discharges, maybe in the last 3 weeks. They had an exceedance. Whether that's because of another factor or the fact that the basin isn't functioning right, I think the commission has a responsibility to make sure that Keating demonstrates to the commission and to the town of Acushnet the function is proper, it's designed properly, and it works for the flow that it receives. I'm not mistaken about anything that I've seen, and I can call it a breach, he can call it something else. At the end of the day, we're both on the same mission. We want to help Keating get the water out of their quarry, but we want it to meet the standards. They did have an exceedance. That tells us there's something wrong. So I would ask that the commission does ask for a plan and ask for the calculations that shows for the flow that it receives, that it's properly designed, that it has the proper settling times and functions as intended. And then the testing that they do under the NIPD's permit demonstrates that it's functioning as intended. There's nothing afoot here. We're trying to help Keating.
Yeah, I know you are, Mr.
I'm gonna-
Hannon. You've been a tremendous help. But the fact of the
Take the sarcasm, Mr.
we've
Vigno.
had no exceedances at all except from October 31st. So from January of 2017 to this date, we had one exceedance, and it was for total suspended solids, and it was slightly above our maximum daily effluent limitation. And that's the extent of it. I'd be more than happy to provide all of our data to the commission. You're talking about one
I'm gonna,
since
right, you made, that was,
2017. One exceedance.
that was
Okay.
made clear. Ask commission members if they have questions or comments before we move this along.
No, not at this point, no.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Brian.
I got a question. Mr. Vigno, what are you guys testing for in the silt? What were the tests that were being conducted?
Well, we will be testing for the RECRA 8 metals, okay? That consists of arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury, selenium, and silver, as well as total petroleum hydrocarbons, which is really just, you get one. And then you compare it to the state of Massachusetts has about 8 different criteria that depending on the number that you get out of that TPH number, then it falls into one of those particular 8 criteria. And so it could be, this is expected TPH from a landfill. This is an expected TPH from another type of thing. So we don't know what that is just yet, Mr. Resendez, but we will, and we'll provide that information to the commission.
Do they test for radon?
No, they wouldn't test for radon because I don't know why they would, because when radon is exposed to the air, then it dissipates immediately. Radon is only an issue within your home because your home doesn't have air exchange in it, particularly during the winter when your windows are closed.
All right. And then I just have a comment to Mara Lee. Maybe we could possibly gain access from the Robichauds to see the end of that outfall pipe.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Prior to discharge, and then maybe periodically, maybe every month, every 3 months, something like that, just so we can, seeing that they did just dredge out the whole river and they re-replicated or rebuilt the whole wetland there. The marsh is completely different than what it was. Maybe we could gain access to that. It just visual, you know, we don't just to go check the outfall and see if there is silt and any other discharge from the quarry that's out there, you know.
I could save you some time, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on a second, Pat. I wanted to comment. Ryan, I think the difficulty with that is how do you separate out what's running from, you know, that runoff that we saw Saturday morning
Yeah,
that has nothing to do with PJ Keating
right.
and the stuff that's running off the road and going down that tributary out to that property. How do we, you know, how do you separate out those two?
I mean, I don't know. Silt's pretty obvious. I mean, you can tell. I don't know. I'm not a
But the silt
professional.
could be coming from those other sources too. And, you know, I don't know that we have a way. I'm not trying to stick up for for PJ Keating. I'm just saying, if we've got a pretty obvious source of silt that's not PJ Keating, then how do we know the difference?
Yeah, it's a good
Marilyn,
point.
I don't know if you wanted to answer, you know, follow up with a response to Ryan, and then I'll call on Mr. Hannon.
Well, I'll be happy to go down and check on it every couple of weeks if you want, just to see if it looks different than it did beforehand. You know, I mean, I don't know that we can measure exactly with all the stuff that comes off the road and comes down the road, you know, the tributary there. But it should show up, I would think, as less silt entirely after the basin is cleaned out.
Oh no, I agree. I agree with the upgrades to the basin. I think that I don't see a problem in that. It's only going to better it, but just, you know, getting a reference point beforehand, and then, you know, 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road to see if there is any disturbance at the end of that outfall pipe and any settlement or whatever, you know. Just an idea. I mean.
Yeah, it's worth looking at.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Again, our contributory area to that is, as you point out, considerably less than what comes from different locations. The salt, the silt, the sand, the various things, the oil that falls on South Main Street and whatnot, all go into that particular basin. In fact, Marilee and I were out there with the EPA when EPA was doing its MS4 work, and noted that the water from South Main Street falls directly to that drainage area, untreated, and that's fine. But you know, there's really no treatment at all along South Main Street. There's no catch basins. There's nothing to clean the water from the roadway itself. It's all just completely drainage into the stream itself, into the intermittent stream itself. So, you know, I would, you know, again, I have no problem with obviously going out there and taking a look at it. Go out at low tide. I mean, you can see what's out there. But there certainly is no. I've shown enough pictures to the commission back in August, as well as more recently, just before Thanksgiving, that we've taken. And there's no indication whatsoever that there's a silt issue out there. I spoke with the superintendent of the contractor who was doing the work for EPA, and I said that we'd been accused of silting this area, and then it was a mess, and so on and so forth. And he indicated, and again, it's hearsay, I realize, but that there was there's no overt siltation coming from that unnamed intermittent tributary. And again, as you indicate, Mr. Resendez, the idea is to make sure that we have as clean water as possible coming out of there. We have no violations pending with the EPA or DEP. DEP has received all of the enforcement orders that have been issued by Mr. Hannon, and they're well aware of what's going on.
So merely, if you want to do that as part of your job, just to go down there in the next week or two or whatever and take some pictures and then follow up over the course of time, go for it. Mr. Hannon, I think you wanted a comment or a question?
Through the chair, I have a question for Mr. Legier.
Please.
Mr. Legier, would it be appropriate to bring to their attention the possibility of the third-party discharge review that would take away their need to see the discharge at the marsh and spend the time doing all of that?
Well, Mr. Hannon, I would have to deflect that question and defer to town council, who is on the call. I think he is your attorney, so the question I think is more appropriately posed.
I just don't know if it's confidential or not.
Again, I think I'm not comfortable offering legal advice to you. I'm not trying to duck or dodge the question. I just don't want to do anything.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, it
Please,
seems like
please, Mr. Forsythe.
there seems to be some agreement here that overall it may make sense to pursue a negative determination subject to some conditions. So I guess the question then would be to try to reach some agreement on what conditions the commission would want and what conditions PJ Keating is willing to accept.
Okay. Well, before I ask for a motion, and I see other people tuned in, and I want to be sure to offer the opportunity for anybody else who would like to comment or question. And if you would like to do so, please identify yourself and then please ask your question. So I see Linda Lee Skapik, Cheryl's iPad, and a couple of others. Are there other questions, or you just, if you don't unmute, I'm going to assume that you're listening in out of curiosity. Okay. Taking all this together, I'm going to ask that we offer a negative determination for this catch basin cleanup project and repair, or catch basin improvement project. Conditions for the purpose of record keeping, I would prefer that we have a plan, so that way questions come up, everybody's backsides are covered. And I don't know what other conditions to put on this other than that. You know, sounds like from the presentation, and I mean, all of the tests you do have to be made public anyway. So it's not like I have to ask for that. You know, whether it's silt tests, water tests, these are all part of EPA records, so I don't have to ask for that. Marilee, any other conditions that you think are appropriate? Then I'll ask Tom.
I'd like to be present when the process is happening, at least for part of it, just to take a look at it.
That makes
Is that
sense.
possible?
Yeah, we,
Absolutely, absolutely, Mary Lee. We will inform the commission through you as the agent. Prior to doing any of the work, we have absolutely no problem with that at all.
okay.
Great.
Mr. Leger?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to be clear, when you're mentioning wanting to see a plan, I understand generally where you're coming from. Are you contemplating there sort of a full-blown engineering plan, or would something short of that suffice? Because I think, as Doug mentioned earlier, the work we're talking about out there is fairly straightforward. I think we could depict that on a plan without having it stamped by an engineer, but we just would want to be clear with exactly what the commission would be looking for there.
I'm going to ask our town council. What do you think, Mr. Whiteside?
Oh, well, that's really up to the commission, Mr. Chairman. You know, I think, you know, certainly something stamped by a PE carries more weight, I think, than something that doesn't. But it's really a matter of the commission's discretion, I think, whether or not what type of plan you think is appropriate here.
I'm leaning towards yes on this, just as CYA. There have been too many legal battles with this to not have a little more, you know, paper coverage.
Yeah.
We don't normally ask for this, but I would just like to have this dealt with once.
Yeah, I agree.
So it sounds like the two conditions we have are stamped plans and an agent on site. I don't know if anybody else has any other suggestions or comments.
No.
No.
That being said, I'll ask Mr.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I guess I would
Mr. Whiteside,
ask Mr. Leger if he.
sorry, Alex, could you hold on a second? I recognize Mr. Hannon first.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
I would just like, when Keating does the plan, that we're able to get the proper dimensions and all of that, that it shows all of the inlets to the basin, every pipe that's coming in, every inflow, that's shown, so that the town can determine from the plan that they supply through our peer review that the basin can handle the flow that it's receiving, and that the water has the time to settle and perform its function. I really think the town needs to know, and the commission, that the basin is properly designed. I think that's a very important thing. I'm not saying it's not, but like you just said, there's been a lot of back and forth on this. This is an important part of their stormwater system, and I think that we really all need to know, stamped, that it properly functions for its intended purpose. And that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Vigno, let me call on Mr. Whiteside first, because
I apologize.
and then I'll come back to you.
Oh, well,
Please.
thanks, Mr. Chairman. I guess I just would like to hear the applicant's thoughts about the proposed conditions and whether they'd be willing to accept those.
Mr. Vigno, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't know exactly what Mr. Hannon's getting at, how it's properly functioning or whatnot. This is a series of best management practices, a series of settling basins within the quarry. You know, we've hired TRC, a hydrologist, to examine our work. All we're asking right now is to clean out the basin. Whether or not Mr. Hannon knows what the detention time is supposed to be within that basin or not is his guess. But you know, again, I mean, this is the end all last portion of a series of settling basins and quarry operations that we do. The fact of the matter is that it has been, and through the data that has been given to EPA, it has been operating correctly. We're merely asking to be able to remove some sediment, to put a pipe on the other side. If you want a PE to stamp that, I don't really know what the PE is stamping other than saying, yes, you can put this pipe to the other side. That's fine. We can do that. An existing conditions plan about the basin. We know what the size of it is. We've had it all surveyed and whatnot. So that's no extra work for us. And we'll be happy to provide that to the commission.
Thank you.
As far as settling times and detention times and so on and so forth, and you know, pumping rates that are very different at different times of the year, and so on and so forth. We've already given the town the pleasure of 24-hour notice of when before we discharge, and so on and so forth. You know, we're sampling it as required. And if the town thinks that they can come up with that we need a detention time longer than what we're doing, even though we're meeting our criteria, then you know, that argument can go back and forth all day. It really doesn't mean a whole lot. You know, it's up to us to meet the water quality effluent standards that we're required to meet, and we're the best judge of that. We don't need anyone telling us that we need a longer detention time within that basin for any reason other than that we meet our EPA water quality standards. So we'll provide a plan, Chairman Roca, that shows that the pipe will be put onto the other side. But that's essentially what the plan will tell you.
Okay.
And, you know, other than that, you know, one could argue about detention times all day. That's not really relevant to our wishing to maintain the basin. Thank you.
So with that being said, I'll entertain a motion for a negative determination with the condition of a stamped engineered plan and that the agent be on site when the work begins and when other work is happening.
That motion, Bob.
We have a motion from Everett. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Heidi. Do we have any further discussion?
No.
I'll go one by one. Heidi, I'm guessing that's a yes from you.
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Everett?
Yes.
Okay, and so that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
Commission members, we appreciate the time, and we will get a stamped plan showing that pipe going over to the other side. With
Thank
the-
you all very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
The dimensions on it as well.
Yes,
Thank you.
And Mr. Ewing, thank you for your patience. Let me read. So we have an RDA from Carlos Motor, 93 Page Yacht Street. Request for determination was filed by Carlos Motor, could be Mata. I apologize. For property located at 93 Page Yacht Street, map 14, lot 4H. The applicant proposes to construct a new septic system on an existing lot, including a septic tank, pump chamber, and leaching field. The applicant is represented by Allen Ewing Engineering Incorporated. Mr. Ewing, the floor, as it were, is yours.
Bob, thank you very much. Good evening, commission members. Our septic system is going to be on the left side of the lot, and about slightly less than half of it is out of the buffer zone, and slightly more of it is in the buffer zone, but it's in the second of the 100-foot buffer zone. So it's 60 feet at the closest point where we're doing some grading around it. It's 75 feet because that's the minimum required in Acushnet for the actual leaching field. So we're on a borderline situation there of wetlands that are actually off-site. And it's a straightforward septic repair. As you said, septic tank, pump chamber, and a slightly raised leaching field. That's it.
Yep. Merrily, any questions or comments from Mr. Ewing?
Like he said, it's pretty straightforward. I think it's, you know, a new septic system is always a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Any comments or questions from members of the commission?
No.
Nope. Good.
So in that case, I will entertain a motion for a negative determination.
I'll make
So
the motion.
moved.
Negative determination.
Thank you, Heidi. We have a motion from Heidi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Everett. Any further discussion?
No.
I will go by one. Heidi in favor, yes or no?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Everett?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Ewing.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is the wetlands bylaw. You know, Paul is not available, so sounds like we're probably going to table this discussion until he can join us. So I have nothing new, and Paul's chairing this subcommittee. Marilee, do you have anything to add to this topic, or should we table?
No, not that topic.
Okay. And the next topic is hunting on conservation land. We had a pretty good discussion on this topic at the last meeting. I then typed up comments and feedback from Ryan, and I sent it to him, and he suggested one change, and now Marilee, you have that document. And I know you've had some discussion with agents in the area. I don't know if you want to add any more to your conversation regarding your conversations with other agents.
Yeah, no, they all follow the state's guidelines. So I guess we're the outlier.
Yeah, so it sounds like our next step, if you're all set with that document, if you'd be able to pass that on to our town administrator, Julie Hebert, and ask her for her guidance as to the next step, as, you know, bring this to selectmen and one of us makes a presentation. I'm happy to do that at a meeting, just to make clear what the purpose of these, this document is.
Okay,
And
I'll
then
make sure
perhaps
that to her.
as well. Okay, and perhaps Board of Health. I don't know if anybody in the commission has any other suggestions as to who else might need to see this. It sounds like Board of Selectmen and Board of Health are the places to go with this.
Yeah, maybe the Parks Department.
And I'm sure Ms. Hebert will pass it along to town council as well.
Right.
Right. Okay. So anybody with further discussion on this topic?
No.
Like I've said before, this is definitely a public health problem. Car accidents aren't healthy, and neither is Lyme disease and babesiosis, all the other things that deer can carry.
Correct. I know we don't have another business topic, but I know in an email from Joanne, she asked that we take a look at the document she sent out with the filing deadlines for 2021. I took a look. I didn't see anything that needed to be changed.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else had seen it or wanted to comment.
Okay.
No. They look good.
So if not,
Me.
I'll accept a motion to accept the filing deadlines for 2021 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Rick. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Everett. Heidi, in favor?
I'm in favor.
Rick?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Everett?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Now, next on the agenda are agent updates. Marilee, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One is the Hamlin Street Bridge replacement.
Mhm.
I believe I sent you guys the plans for that, but I'm not positive. So I can do it
You
again,
did.
but we don't get to,
You did.
we don't get to hear them, you know, with a filing, because they have this exemption for, I don't know, the transportation bond bill, I think is what they put it. But anyway, the Mass DOT is now exempt from filing for bridge replacements. So, so what we do get to do is comment on the water quality certification and the 404 certification applications. So I got a letter today, or an email today, from Chris Ross at the DEP, saying he'd be glad to accept our comments. So I'll send all that stuff out to you guys again. And, maybe if you get a chance, you could look it over and just eyeball it and see if there's anything that sticks out, that we should bring to DEP's attention. They're a little concerned about the fish, but they're working with DMF on that. So beyond that, I haven't heard about any real concerns yet, but I'm sure it's going to be a big project. So there's that. And then there's one more. I mentioned this, I think, to a couple of you on the site visit, but there's a project that the town is really excited about doing, like extending that Riverview Walk towards, like, beyond the old Titleist building.
Yeah.
And into the area that EPA just cleaned up there, so that it'd be a nice walk along the river, in other words, and if possible, it may even go through the woods all the way up to the Council on Aging, which would be a nice walk, so that's going to require some permitting, I think, from you guys, depending on how close they want to get to the river. But if we get a chance, maybe we could take a walk down there sometime when we're doing site visits and it's not pouring rain.
Yep.
Exactly.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Now, I mean, technically, doesn't anything within 200 feet have to come
Yeah.
to us?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I'll make sure it happens this time, for sure.
Thank you. All right. Any
That's
other?
all I have.
Okay. Anybody else with business for the commission?
No.
Nope.
All right. In that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
I think I heard Everett make a motion. Do we have a second?
Oh, second.
Thank you, Heidi. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned at 7:20 PM.